Hi, and welcome to Home Buying Made Simple, a place where we come together, talk, and learn about real estate. My name is Daniel Perry with Williamson Associates Realty, and I'm here with a special guest, Mr. Lamar Dismuke, who's going to help break us down what buyers should be asking when it comes to fully understanding homeowners insurance. But before we get into our segment, let's get to know about our guest, Mr. Dismuke. How are you doing today?
Great, great. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for coming on. So let's get some background about you. So what's your role? Where are you from? And how'd you get into insurance?
Okay. All right. Again, my name is Lamar Dismuke. I'm born and raised here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Um, there's a saying that goes, you don't really choose a career in insurance, you kind of stumble into it.
Okay.
And that's how it was for me. I was on a totally different career path in college. I graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and I went to a career day, a career fair on campus, and was just looking around and came across this nice display from American Family Insurance, which was for a auto claims investigator.
Okay.
And essentially, that role was for someone to handle auto insurance claims. And eventually, I kind of went in that direction. So from, what was it, 1991 until 1996, I investigated auto accidents.
Okay.
So I was the one who um, I would go out to the scenes of auto accidents. I would interview the parties of an auto accident, um, obtain the police reports, handled injury claims. And to make a long story short, one day I fell in love with the woman I eventually married. And during that process, I started to look at other avenues of being able to control my income and being an insurance agent with American Family was that avenue. And so my role is essentially the way I view it is to be an advisor to my clients. One of the things I pride myself in is um, breaking it down, the insurance coverage and the process, breaking that down to my clients
Okay.
on a basic level so they can understand it. I'm
Absolutely.
sure you know a lot of times when you're talking with your colleagues, you use insurance lingo that you guys are familiar with.
Hmm.
But sometimes a mistake that a lot of us professionals make is we use that same jargon when we're talking to our clients who have no idea of, they're not using that jargon every day. And so one of the things I do is I try to put it at, a base level, so people understand what it is that they're getting. Because a lot of times, you know, uh, I've had people come to me from, other insurance companies, and after I explain the coverages, they'll indicate, they appreciate how I explained it because, previous agents would, just kind of gloss over and, the clients end up finding themselves just saying, okay, okay, but not really understanding what it is
Yeah.
that they're getting.
Yep.
So that's, what my role is. I try to give them the options to let them know what will suit the needs that they feel is important to them. And yeah, I've been doing that since full-time 1996.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing though, too, because people really don't know uh about like how do you ensure the things that you care about most and understand some of the jargon that kind of comes with it, because it can be a lot, it can be kind of cumbersome at some
Yeah,
time. So I'm glad that you were able to come on and actually help break some of this down so people are
yeah,
interested, they can have a better understanding of homeowners insurance.
yeah.
So let's dive into our segment then. So what does a standard homeowner insurance policy cover?
Well, your standard insurance, homeowners insurance policy is broken down in a few different segments or compartments. So you have coverage that will cover the structure of the home itself, the building, and also the other structures, like if you have a garage, a detached garage on the property, or maybe a deck or a shed. You also have coverage for your personal property or your contents within the home, like your furniture, clothing, TVs, um, things of that nature. It also provides liability coverage as well. That is what's going to cover you. Like the example I always give my homeowner clients, especially ones who are just purchasing a home. I'll use the example of, once you throw that housewarming party and you have people over, gathering and everyone's having a good time. If one of your guests were to trip over, the cooler that you had, in the driveway or the backyard, or if they trip over, your kids' toys that, are on the floor, if they injure themselves and if that person, as a result of that injury, if they have to miss work or if they have a pain and suffering claim, that's what the liability coverage protects you for things that you're liable for to someone else. It also includes coverage for medical expense coverage as well. So using that same example, if that person that's injured, if they just have medical bills that you're responsible for, that's what it protects you against. The types of losses, it's a wide range of losses. So fire loss, smoke damage, if your home is broken into, if it's vandalized, tornado losses, hail, storm damage, yeah, excuse me, things of that nature. That's what it covers you against. Yeah.
And then as far as dealing with losses, 'cause I know we had it like earlier in the year, the flooding that went on.
Yeah.
How do they determine like how much you actually will receive for those type of losses?
Okay. Well, great question. So when it comes to water losses, especially like what we had in August, and I was one of the people, unfortunately, who was affected by that.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear.
Um, So there are two types of water losses. So there's sewer backup and sump pump um, entry, where water backs up into the sewer drain, or if you have a sump pump in your home, water overflows through the sump pump. The other type is flood damage. And you may have seen on the news where there were some people where it looks as if the foundation wall had been caved in
Yeah.
by the flood waters. So with the sewer backup coverage, that's an optional coverage that you can add on to your homeowner's policy. It's not part of a standard homeowner's package. It's almost like, for example, if you have auto insurance and if you decide to add on rental reimbursement or emergency road service, those are optional coverages that you can add on. So sewer backup is the same way. So essentially, how it's determined is, um, once you submit a claim, um, one, you have to make sure you have that coverage, because if you don't have it, and if water, came in to your home, Unfortunately, you're not going to have that protection because you don't have that optional coverage. You can also have that optional coverage, but if the water entry into your home was different than that coverage that you have, you can also find yourself without coverage. So let's say, for example, if you have the sewer backup and sump pump endorsement on your home, but that's not how the water entered into your home. If it entered in through the window wells, the foundation, if it caved in your wall, and if that's how it came into your home, and if you don't have flood insurance, then that sewer backup coverage unfortunately won't
Apply.
be able to assist you. One of the um, things that I've always stressed, because again, I've been around long enough where, we've experienced these type of rains, several times during the course of my 30-year period.
Mhm.
And I understand, a lot of times people are looking to save money when they get homeowners insurance. So they may want, I've come across people who, have said, well, I've lived in the home for 20 years and have never had any issues with it. I may add this coverage on later, but for right now, I'll bypass the sewer backup coverage. And there were a lot of people this past August who never had water in their homes before, and this was the first time it happened.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of, I always tell people if you're paying attention to what's going on in the world, um, the global warming, climate change, it's a real thing. And if I always tell people if you just watch the 5:30 evening news, in the first 60 seconds, they'll kind of give you a rundown of the stories that they're going to discuss. And a
Mhm.
lot of times you'll see they're talking about flooding in some part of the country, um, storm, tornadoes in another part of the country, and these things are happening more frequently. So these storms have kind of been a game changer for a lot of people. And, I understand everyone has a budget. I have a budget. Um, but review your policy
Mhm.
to find out if you do have the coverage, what gaps you may have. And a lot of people, will reach out to, you know, especially after this past August storm, I don't think I have it, but I just want to double check.
Yeah.
And some people still may decide not to add it on because of the cost. But it's always a good thing to check because you don't want to get in a situation where you're caught by surprise and you think you have something and you actually don't.
Yeah. And that brings up a couple other questions though too that I took down. So for the first one that I have, um, what are some things people are think that are covered but actually not? So like the flooding and things like that. And then after that, how do you determine how much coverage your home actually needs?
Okay. So with the what people think that's covered, the sewer backup is, one component. The other thing I always tell people is when the insurance company sends out like your renewal packet,
Mhm.
a lot of times people will get the packet and just take a quick peek at it and set it off to the side. I always advise people to take a look at it because I know a lot of insurance companies will have disclaimers and it may say, this policy does not include sewer backup or sump pump coverage or flood coverage. And, if it's something that you're interested in, contact your insurance agent or your insurance company. So that's the first thing I advise them to do is take a look at their policy to see if they have the coverage. And then you can also set limits of how much coverage you want.
Okay.
It's not a one size fit all situation. Some people have finished basements and they may need, more coverage than someone who just has, an unfinished basement with a washer and dryer and furnace down there. So that's where working with an insurance professional can help you set limits that, will, fit your needs. The other thing that I advise people to do is, especially for people who have they have furs, make sure that your policy will adequately cover those items because even though your policy has personal property limits, within those limits, um, it only covers so much for jewelry, watches, gems, and furs. So I've seen people who have had, expensive wedding rings and they may lose it and they, find themselves not getting the full value of that because they didn't have it scheduled on their insurance policy. So those are the two things that, between the sewer backup limits, the jury limits, and then sometimes for people who have been insured with a company for a while, they may do changes. They may remodel their home. They may, have bought a home that didn't have a finished basement and now they've remodeled it and they've added value. So you want to make sure that your policy keeps up with the changes that you do, on your home as, as a homeowner. So it's always good to have those insurance reviews as well with your insurance advisor.
Okay. And for those reviews and those packets that you actually get, does it actually say in plain language things that you should consider, or is it kind of you have to really just talk to somebody and get the information that way?
Well, if there's, again, that kind of goes back to what I mentioned earlier, like for our renewal packet, it shows an illustration of a house and
Mhm.
it has around the house the types of losses, that are covered, that I mentioned earlier. So I really appreciate that because that puts it in plain speak. But as far as the limits, again, if you really think like if your house were to burn down right now, what measures do you have in place to help you determine what the value of your personal property is? I always tell my clients, keep in mind if a loss occurs and you have to put in an insurance claim, the insurance adjuster wasn't there when you purchased your items. So they're relying on you to provide as much information as possible so they can help settle your claim um, and get you the most bang for your insurance dollar. So if you don't have, I tell people you can do something as simple as if you have a camera, just take your camera, put it in video mode, walk around your house,
Okay.
so you can show the different items that you have in each room. Because, if there is a fire that occurs, that's already going to be a traumatic experience. But then trying to remember everything you have, I've yet to meet a person who has receipts for every item that they've purchased, in their household. But if they have a video showing, those items, that'll help, you know, uh, take away a lot of that pressure of
Yeah,
them trying to remember every little thing that they've had. So, those are the other things that I try to advise my clients to do. And then when they take that video, I've had some people send me the videos and I'll attach that information to their account. So if
okay.
something does happen, we have a record of that.
That's great. That's actually really good.
Yeah.
Um, so let's talk about costing at this point because everyone wants to know what affects the price of a policy. So how does price and how does cost actually factor into this?
Great question. So for homeowners insurance, there's going to be several factors, a ton of factors that affect the rates. Most recently, insurance companies are using aerial inspections of the roofs on people's homes. Um, that can affect your rate depending on the condition that your roof shingles are in, depending on the complexity of your roof, depending on how big your house is, and especially living in this area where we have a lot of windstorms. If you have, a roof that's, really of nice size, that can affect your rate because that's more of a risk if there's a wind loss. Insurance credit scores, which are based off of our individual credit, that affects rates as well. So you can have two people who live next door to each other that are in a community where the houses essentially look the same, but you can be paying two different rates because the insurance credit scores are totally different.
Okay.
Um, the endorsements, those optional coverages that you have, that can affect the rate as well. Also having your jury schedule, that can affect the rate. I have clients who, I'll do insurance reviews for, and they'll make the comment, I was talking to so and so and they pay, only, X amount of dollars, and I'll review the policy and going through the coverages, and I'm like, well, keep in mind you have um, X amount of dollars of jury and FERS scheduled on your policy, and that's creating an additional premium of this dollar amount, and they're like, oh yeah, I forgot I had that, on there. Or they may have, again, a sewer backup coverage, and the person that they're talking to doesn't have that coverage. So those kind of things can, affect the rate as well. The other thing that can affect it is whether or not you're bundling your insurance. So a person who has their home, their auto, life insurance bundled, you're going to get additional discounts as opposed to someone who just has their home with one company, the auto with the other company. Those are discounts that they're, missing out on. So there are several factors. Your, deductible, the limit of the deductible that you have. The higher your deductible, that lowers your premium. Some people may have like the lowest deductible offered. Some people may, raise, their deductibles to help offset their premium. So yeah, so there's a few factors that can affect the rates. And then, if you've had past losses, past losses can affect your premium as well. So yeah, there's a ton of factors that can affect it.
And going with deductibles for a first time homeowner, how do you go about choosing the right deductible for your home?
Well, for many companies that I've seen, typically your standard base deductible may be $1,000, or some companies have the deductible at 1% of whatever your home is insured for. So it's all going to depend on the amount of coverage a person has and the insurance company that they have as well. And that's a great question that you brought up because a lot of times people aren't aware of the deductible that they have. Um, and that kind of goes into when they're speaking with their agent or their insurance company. Because sometimes, like for the 1-800 companies, there isn't a particular agent to talk to, it's a customer service representative. So as you're kind of going through the spiel of the coverages, a person may not it may not register that their deductible is 1% of what the home is insured for. So
Okay.
if they have a home that's insured for $350,000 and if they have a loss, that's a $3,500 deductible that they may not have been aware of.
Okay.
And like I said, some companies, and two, it's going to boil down to what that individual person thinks that they can bear on themselves, for themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then I know you mentioned discounts, and so you said that bundling was one way of doing discounts. But I know, especially when you have a first time home buyer, they want to do a lot of remodeling and things like that. Does energy efficient like windows and doors and like at those sort of additions, do that also add to the discounts, or is it mainly just bundling for house and car and everything like that? Or what additional discounts could people look for?
Well, I know for like if there's newer homes, like recently constructed homes, some companies have like a new home discount as that they can get as opposed to a home that's was built like in the 50s or 60s or whatnot. So those are discounts that they can get. Other discounts are if you have like a home alarm system, some type of security cameras. So those are things that you should ask your insurance advisor or your insurance company about as well, because a lot of times we don't know. You may not have it, when you first purchase the home. I know we, mentioned it to clients who are new home buyers. If you eventually, do add this on, if you do get an alarm system, if you do get security cameras, try to remember to let us know so we can get that discount on for you. Um, some companies may have offer discounts, like if you're a member of various organizations, or if you've graduated from certain colleges, you might be able to get a discount, for that as well. So it's always, yeah. And again, it goes back to having those conversations. Um, a lot of times people, I know time is precious for a lot of people, but if you can find ways to save money, that time may be well spent.
Absolutely. And then when should buyers start shopping for homeowners insurance?
So for new home buyers, typically I get contacted when they find a home that they've received an accepted offer on. Then they'll call me and I'll get information from them regarding the features of the home, the number of bedrooms, bathrooms, the type of flooring, if it has a finished basement, what percentage of the basement is finished, if they know how old the roof shingles are, and I'll get information from city assessors to get like the square footage of the property, type of construction, things of that nature. And we have what's called a replacement cost calculator where we put all that information in uh, to help us determine what the estimated replacement cost of the home is. And that uses like the local construction cost for what contractors are charging for labor and material. So yeah, so I usually get contacted when they find a home that they've received an accepted offer on. And then I'll do my part as far as going over doing the quote for them, um, finding out if they want a bundle discount by having auto insurance with us. And then we go through the process of explaining those coverages, that I talked about before, and those optional coverages as well. So yeah, so I usually get contacted once they get the accepted offer.
And how much time do they have to do like the add-ons and things like that? Does it kind of work like health insurance where you have like one time a year you have to add these things on, or can you add them throughout? Or
No, you can add on. I've had clients, because of, the closing costs that they're paying, they may not want to add on certain things right now, like the sewer backup coverage. The only time that they can't add something like that on is if we're in the midst of,
yeah, what's actually
flood
happening?
warnings, and then, you want to call in, hey, I want to add this coverage on, you know.
Can't do
Yeah,
that.
you can't do that. But yeah, there isn't, you can add those optional coverages on at any time. I've had people who have contacted me and, to say, hey, I got engaged over the weekend and, I want to add this ring on to my policy. So yeah, you can do that at any time.
Okay, that's good to know. And
Yeah.
then to kind of wrap up, what's the number one question that every first-time home buyer should ask their insurance agent?
The number one question. The number one, well, in my opinion, it's a two-way street. The insurance advisor should make sure to go through the coverages. Um, a lot of times you can kind of get caught in a situation where, um, you're dealing with the same thing every day, and the thing that you don't want to do is skip the process. And what I mean is, if I'm dealing with my third client of the day, I want to treat that client the same way I treated the first client
Mhm.
by going over those coverages. Because you don't want to get caught in a situation where, and I always tell people this, if you're calling around for insurance quotes, don't just have a person say, okay, the cost for this insurance is going to be X amount of dollars for the year, because you may think, oh, that's, a great deal. But if you don't know what those coverages are, you may be missing out on something, when a loss does occur. And then you realize that's why it was such a great deal, because you don't have coverages A, B, and C.
Yeah,
And but for the client, um, don't be afraid to ask, even if the agent explains it to you, if it goes over your head, if you didn't catch it the first time, this is your money that you're paying for this product. So don't be afraid to ask, can you explain to me if this is covered? I've had situations where I've talked to clients and explained the coverages. They'll leave the office and they'll call right back and they'll say, "I'm sorry, you may have, explained this, but does this include fire damage?" And yeah, so if there are any questions that, pop up, don't be afraid to ask your agent. The one thing that always surprises me is I get so many calls from people who aren't my clients who ask questions about their policies, if certain situations are going to be covered under, their policy. And, in back of my mind, I'm like, I appreciate the phone call, but, I really think this is a question you need to ask your insurance agent, because that is the company that has your policy.
yeah.
They may handle things a little bit differently. I can give you information on a general scale, but for more specifics, I think you should, ask your insurance company those questions.
Well, thank you. And then for those out there who have been inspired by this conversation through this segment, how do they get in contact with you as an insurance professional?
Okay, well, again, my name is Lamar Dismuke. My office is at 8201 West Capitol Drive, Suite 160 in Milwaukee. My office number is 414-527-1925. And you can Google me. I also have a page on Facebook as well. So I'm easy to reach.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, hey, I do want to appreciate the time and everything that you've and the knowledge that you've given us today for this. So I do really do appreciate that. Um, yeah, and thank you. Thank you for your time.
Well, I appreciate you contacting me, and any questions in the future, feel free to reach out.
All right, will do.
All right,
And thank
thank you.
you. And thank you for joining Home Buying Made Simple. Appreciate it.
Thank you.